So this novel, Yo-Yo Boing, was published in 1998. And it's been described as exasperating, confusing, utterly frustrating. It's a novel that is uncompromising in its assumption of bilingual competence in its readers. The bulk of the narrative moves back and forth between English in very quick succession. There is no attempt to gloss or to explain for readers. So in this way, it breaks away not only from the hegemony of English in the United States, but also from Puerto Rico's view of Spanish as the linchpin of modern island identity. I'd like to argue that the anxieties about language that we read in this novel intersect with anxieties about gender fluidity and about queer desire. Language is a frequent source of unease for characters in Yo-Yo Boing. These characters are in between fluid subjectivities in many ways. They are Puerto Ricans, but they're caught between statehood and independence. They're speakers of more than one language. They are creative minds that are caught between the roles of translator and writer. And they're often subjects in queer bodies or with queer desires. There is an insistence then in the book on the overlapping, mutually constitutive nature of different social identities. And in this, Janina Brassies' writing is in the tradition of intersectional feminism, best represented perhaps by Gloria Anzaldúa, who explores in her bilingual book, Borderlands, La Frontera, the New Mestiza, how her identity as a Chicana intersects with her identity as a speaker of two languages and with her identity as a lesbian. Readers of Yo-Yo Boing have to think about how a person's linguistic identity, especially the act of speaking and writing in a language that is perhaps not their mother tongue, in inverted commas, might intersect with their queer desires and practices. For me, the disruption, defamiliarization, and complexity of the prose style in this bilingual book is clearly legible in relation to challenges of queer representation. It's frequently undecidable, it's indeterminate, it resists fixity and transparency, and it appropriates the transgressive. And I think here, Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick's definition of queer is particularly helpful. And I'll just put a short quotation up on screen. She describes it as the open mesh of possibilities, gaps, overlaps, dissonances and resonances, lapses and excesses of meaning, where the constituent elements of anyone's gender, of anyone's sexuality, aren't made or can't be made to signify monolithically. This conceptualization is particularly apt in the context of Yo-Yo Boing's characters, who identify and then disidentify at different moments with different genders and sexualities. And although queer has been associated primarily with the deconstruction of two powerful binarisms in lesbian and gay studies, so male-female and heterosexual-homosexual, I find Sedgwick's open mesh and a useful way of thinking about Brassies' language too, because here is another practice that cannot be made to signify monolithically, as she puts it. Its relationship to dominant linguistic norms is complex and in flux, and it has lapses and excesses of meanings, as she puts it, that will vary depending on each reader's own linguistic competence. In Yo-Yo Boing then, the same shame is associated with queer desire and gender identity as it is with speaking an imperfect, digamos, version of a language, or of mixing English with Spanish. In particular, Brassies' idiosyncratic English suggests not entirely confident or comfortable usage. So her characters talk as though they learned English later in life. They make lots of English mistakes, in inverted commas. They're often amusing, they're surprisingly productive or creative, but they are connected constantly with other forms of social transgression. For instance, Sexual and linguistic marginality are policed in similar ways in this book. So we find characters often reacting negatively to those who don't conform to conventional notions of masculinity and femininity. Characters impose sexual identities onto one another based on their behavior. And at the same time, characters are continually drawing attention to perceived, infelicities in other people's language, especially their pronunciation. They make judgments about each other based on the way that they speak, and they worry about their own language competence at the same time. These two causes of anxiety then, so language on the one hand and gender and sexuality on the other, they come together in this pivotal scene in the novel, in which the protagonist, who in many ways resembles Brassies herself, performs at a literary salon. And importantly, the poems she chooses to perform are written almost exclusively in English, which is her non-dominant language, and it's one that's associated for her with much unease. It's an idiosyncratic English that she uses. It's notable for its inverted word order, awkward expressions, neologisms that are kind of strung together on the basis of sound association. And it's also peppered with occasional Spanish. And in her nervousness before she goes on stage, she complains to her partner. She says, I quote, "Why did you make me wear this Mao Zedong outfit? It doesn't fit me. I don't belong here. I'm scared. Why did you take me out of my closet? I want my closet back. Close my doors. Do you think they really want to know who I am?" So the fear and discomfort and shame associated with performing work, largely written in her non-dominant language, is here linked quite clearly with uncertainty about gender and sexuality. Sexuality, because she describes herself as reluctantly out of the closet, and gender because she's in cross-dress, and also because immediately before going on stage, she imagines herself as un niño perdido en el gentío, a boy lost in the crowd. Immediately after the performance, she has a panicked response to the audience's laughter at her work, which she assumes is derisory laughter. Her unwillingness to be labeled funny reminds us that that word funny can describe something strange, something suspicious or unpleasant, connotations it shares, of course, with the word queer. She says, "You're imposing your laughter on me, and you think I'm funny. It's really insulting. I don't have a sense of humor. Respect my wishes." Her strident rejection then of the audience's laughter conveys a fear that her bilingual writing will be interpreted as an expression of queerness. But it's really in a scene towards the end of the novel that bilingualism is presented most clearly as a queer practice. In this scene, an indeterminate number of speakers discuss T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. Eliot's ability to use multiple languages is held up as the standard to which Brassies speakers should aspire, and they repeatedly accuse one another of falling short of it. So as the characters quote lines from the poem in its many different languages, one character asks anxiously, "What does it mean?" and then is ridiculed for not understanding, even though none of her companions is able to offer an adequate translation. They also continue to police one another's pronunciation. So when one of them quotes a passage in German, the other asks, "¿Cómo es su pronunciación?" What's her pronunciation like? To which the response is, "Fatal," awful. Then they eventually rewrite and repurpose The Wasteland's multilingualism, rendering lines in Spanish and re-rendering them in a mixture of Spanish and English as an expression of Eliot's frustrated homosexual desire, which they perceive in the poem's references to Eastern and Western asceticism. Now, I think it's worth quoting this passage at length to show you the peculiar workings of Brassies' dialogue, which we haven't actually seen yet. And just to say, I'm going to read this out in English, and then I'm going to pause for a considerable time to give the interpreters a go at having their version of this. So, I never liked Eliot. So unsensual, unappealing, repressed. I mean, being in the closet is all right if you come out someday, but he never came out. And then he wrote, burning, 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 burning. O Lord, thou pluckest me out. What does pluckest mean? Oh Dios, ¿por qué me desplumas? Dios lo desplumó y por eso se hizo religioso. His sexual desire was so repressed hasta que Dios le quitó todas sus plumas. ¿Pero qué es un poeta sin plumas? Es como un vampiro sin dientes o una bruja sin escoba. I would never have written, do I dare to eat a peach? Shall I part my hair in the middle? I would have eaten the peach. I have eaten plenty. And why is it so difficult to part your hair in the middle? Scaredy cat, pusilánime. O Lord, thou pluckest me out. Me out. O Lord, thou pluckest me out. Oh Dios, me estás bloqueando del closet. I'm fascinated to know how the interpreters dealt with that, but I suppose that shall remain a mystery for me. So in this passage, Eliot is positioned in a queer space in a number of ways. As in so many other instances in the novel, characters are imposing a sexual identity onto another person and finding fault with them for it. So he seems to be mocked for writing the old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, which is the poem the musical Cats was based on. This is, we can see this through the insult pussycat, which casts him as a cowardly, closeted homosexual, but also as a woman through its association with female genitalia. And then this kind of unexpected cross-phonological leap, Eliot is made literally to meow, because the vowel sounds in me out are elongated until their referential function dissolves into this animal cry, me out, making the poet transgress the human, non-human border, in addition to the male-female border. That meow is understood to be an expression of Eliot's queer desire. And it also highlights the opaque materiality of foreign words, their semiotic blankness for readers without the requisite language skills. So in this instance, for a character with incomplete understanding of Eliot's English, but also the creative ways that those foreign words can be repurposed. So in this passage and in the novel at large, Brassies' language is queer in the sense that it doesn't conform to convention or expectation. It's transgressive, it's indeterminate, it's fluid, and it's also linked to notions of impurity, of deviance, degradation, and especially shame. There's a link then between shame at being a colonial subject who is a speaker of two languages and the shame of being gender non-conforming or non-heterosexual. That said, the characters in this conversation demonstrate precisely the expressive and innovative potential of the uncertain and fluid and queer linguistic forms that result from partial knowledge of a language or of language contact. I think Yo-Yo Boing is a manifesto really for the creative, productive power of language mixing. Now, I'm just going to leave Janina Braski there because I want to use the remaining couple of minutes just to share briefly my experience as a scholar of Latinx literature in the UK. So as Rachel explained, my PhD, which I did at Queen Mary in London, mainly focused on Spanglish writing by Latinx writers based in the US and experimental translations of that writing. So it seemed an obvious choice to look for postdocs and teaching positions in that country when I finished my PhD, as no Latino studies posts were ever advertised in the UK. Whereas in the US, there are many well-established departments of Latinx studies. And while I was able to publish my monograph in the US, I didn't even try to pitch it in the UK because I felt that it would have more relevance and a bigger audience over there. But as a British woman who learned Spanish later in life, I felt something of an imposter. And we might even say a bit like Brassies' characters, I felt quite underconfident and uncomfortable applying for research and teaching positions in the US, where there are very many impressive Spanish speakers who are scholars of Latinx literature already working in the field there. So I actually soon gave up applying for posts in the US altogether. And interestingly, my options in the UK on the job market were limited really to posts either in things like world literatures in English, which wouldn't have allowed me to work really on really much on Latin America or in Spanish, or in translation studies, which invariably involve also teaching non-literary translation. I was interviewed for one really, really brilliant post, the title of which was Lecturer in World and Comparative Literatures, brackets, Hispanic, at Royal Holloway University of London, sadly closed but no cigar. And as the years went on and with the pandemic, I started doing more and more literary translation. I established myself more permanently here in Mexico, and I eventually gave up applying for teaching and research positions altogether. I now work almost full-time as a freelance literary translator. I speak daily in Spanglish, and my only remaining tie to academia is an editorial position at Hispanic Research Journal, which is based out of Queen Mary in the School of Languages, Linguistics and Film. And I don't have any grand conclusions from this. I just wanted to kind of share this trajectory in case it resonates with other people present, in the hope of building up a better picture throughout today of what it means to be doing this kind of work in the UK. So thank you very much for listening, and I can't wait for the following presentations.
Thank you so much, Ellen. That was incredible. I'm really excited to get to the Q&A as well, because I have loads of questions. Lovely. Next up, we have Naia. So take it away, Naia, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ellen Jones. And that was amazing. And it really resonated with me because hablo Spanglish todos los días. I'm gonna have to share my screen, so I'm just gonna try and see how this is going to work. Could you please let me know when you're able to see my screen, someone?
Okay. We can't see it yet.
Yeah?
No, we cannot see it.
Okay. Okay, how about now?
No, we cannot see it.
Okay, that's it. I won't be able to share my screen now, so I don't know what's happening. You have it. I sent it to you. Is it possible that, Valentina, can you share it for me?
Yes, give me 2 seconds.
Yeah. It's just all one picture anyway, so.
1 second, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, these things happen, you know, like we've been 2 years doing that and doing this, and you would have thought I would have got it all sorted, but no. In the meantime, I can just start telling you about myself, and I will just start with saying that queerness and finding identity for me has been a massive process, very hard, and as it might be for anyone that is trying to find themselves. So, thank you, Valentina.
I think you can see it now. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I can see it now. So basically, what I intended to talk to you about today is my steps to decolonize myself and how I try to do it, finding respect, compassion, and how that connects with connection and survival and fluidity and responsibility. 2 years ago, I had a massive, not 2 years ago, a year ago, I had a massive burnout, and I had to stop. I moved a lot my whole life. Since very little, I migrated within my country, and many times. So I moved a lot. I had to be very adaptable to situations, but at the same time, I had clashes with who I was wherever I went to a new space. I was discriminated. I was subject of violence in many different forms, verbal, physical, sexual. And that kind of takes away your own identity because it tells you something that you're not. For example, sexual violence tells you that you are an object, right? When you're not. Discriminate, you are not important, that you are a lesser person when you're not. The whole world is against you when you're trying to find your own identity, especially in this adolescent years, durante la juventud. And that's the most difficult because that is the natural period that we've got to find our own identity when we are starting to become more independent from our parents and to find what is that we like. So when the world starts telling you a lot of things that you're not, it becomes a lot more difficult. So when I moved to London, it all happened again, but with a lot more strength. You know, like I was receiving racism, and that was like, okay. When in Chile, it wasn't much racism, but it was aporophobia. The one that I received in here was different. I was received violence, physical violence. So you start wondering, why is that? During all these periods in my search of identity, I start feeling alone, very alone. You get that sense of loneliness that you try to surround yourself with people and with things that will make you feel better. When in reality, that loneliness is because we have abandoned ourselves to be something that we're not, to try to fit in. When I began my journey of self-discovery, I realized that I had no love for myself. I had no respect or compassion. So the best way to learn, I learned that the best way to keep connected with myself was to have a clear understanding of what my values are and hold to them very dearly, because they are the most precious things that we can have. Is the essence of ourselves, and is the only thing that we have to share with others and to give others and to leave behind. My values are respect and compassion. I'm trying to take them into the feminist activism, because I know women are more sensitive to and more empathic, and that makes it easier to feel compassion for others. However, the criticism is for oneself. It's like, if you're not able to feel compassionate for yourself, how are you going to be able to feel compassion for the rest of the world? And how are we going to change the world, the one we lived in, the one that the colonizers have built for us? Because we've got these structures and all these anti-values going around, and we've talked about institutions that have been built by colonizers, that have a set of values that look and they tell people how to be and who to be in the society. However, what we need is to find who we are and who we want to be in this society. And only that comes when you know what your values are and you respect them and you stay true to themselves, true to those. And when you know your values, you realize that the more you practice them, because it is a practice, it is an approach to life, you are making a lot more connections with other people. I've got very multicultural friends. I've got friends from all around the world, Hong Kong, China, Japan. And respecting myself has helped me to understand how a different frame of work or frame of mind, on how to listen to others, on how to be compassionate with myself and avoid judgment to others as well. And the way I have more meaningful connections. And connection is very important for survival. I mean, that is what we are wired from the caveman, the cave woman. We needed to be connected in a community to survive. That is who we are. And that is why we look for that. I also think that it is in those connections that we learn about being flexible and being fluid, that by learning with others, we allow change, we evolve, because that fluidity that you allow yourself, that you allow to be different, because we are not the same person that we were yesterday or the week before, and that is fluidity. You're flowing, you're not rigid, you're flexible, and it's that help us to evolve and connect, and those same connections will help us to grow. So it's all like a very self-feeding or how do you say? Es un sistema que se retroalimenta, de retroalimentación, where it all links together. You respect others, they respect you, you connect with others, they connect with you. You are together surviving, you are together flowing, and all together we've got responsibilities, the responsibility to hold ourselves accountable for who we are and for how do we want to build this new world with feminist values and decolonizing ourselves. And I guess that the word decolonization is very important in this case, because our body is the first, is where we show the colonization for the first time. Is when I don't allow the rest of the social structures to intervene with who I am and with who I want to be, is the first step to decolonize yourself and to free yourself from the standards of this society. By the way, I just realized that my video is not on and I cannot turn it on. And I don't know if the host can do it because I've been realizing I've been moving my hands around to explain things.
Sorry, I turned it off because the internet was not very good. So if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. Sorry. It's not that my face is important anyway. I hope that people are understanding my ideas. So to the point, I'm in this quest of finding myself outside this society, because this society is all I know. I was born within these structures, but I know that there are different things out there. So I am allowing myself to be a better person and to dream of things that I don't know of. And this is my message to you all. Like, if we want to build a new world, we need to start with ourselves. I can't go judging other people because it's not healthy. and I cannot go and judge myself for who I was yesterday, because this is what I'm doing now. I'm being flexible, I'm evolving, and I'm learning. And another thing that I could leave you is that the call out culture in activism is not part of this growing thing. Because if you call out something that a person did yesterday, you're not allowing that person to grow. And I guess it's really important, if you are making connections, to be responsible for who we were and for who we want to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naia. That was beautiful. Next up, we have Andrea. I'm going to ask our brilliant audience members to continue sending your questions, just so that we have enough time to get to as many as possible. So if you have a burning question for any of our panelists, do send it in the chat, and feel free to chat and answer in the chat, panelists. All right. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Andrea.
Hello. I don't even see myself. Hello. I think that we're going with the video first. ¿Cierto, Valentina?
Yes, we're going with the video first.
Okay. Enjoy it. Okay.
I don't think any human is illegal. As a person without papers, I'm not from here. I don't belong here. They don't see it like I belong here. Their standards of who is legal and whose passport is better. I still didn't really have a concept of me being illegal, of me not being able to move around. And now I have everything I need, literally, including papers and a home. And yeah, and still the stigma, but I'm here.
Nuestros territorios tienen algo en común. Tienen los olores, tienen los sabores, tienen los colores. Nuestros territorios tienen algo en común, y es la falta de justicia. La justicia que estamos tomándonos en nuestras manos. ¿Y usted por qué cree que estamos aquí? Es una larga historia. Una historia que comenzó hace más de 500 años atrás.
I think it's the love of music. I think that is the thing I carry, like the love of this coming together as a group of friends and having a good time around the table or in the dance floor. I don't know, it's weird to say because I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, maybe that's not the thing that I carry, but it's the thing that carry me.
Hello. Well, I don't see, I see like, I'm gonna change the view of my, hello. Thank you very much for OTRAS. I want to thank as well for this seminar that we are having today. I want to thank Valentina Aparicio, who is a person that I've been in contact for to be presenting this work today. And yes, well, I'm a little bit nervous. I pushed myself to to do this presentation in English because for the same reason that Ellen Jones was talking in the beginning, no? Like the lack of comfort that sometimes we feel to not be presented in our mother tongue. So I said, okay, one of the ways I have to start to push myself, especially in this context, is to speak in English. So it's challenging, I'm a little bit nervous, but here we go. OTRAS, it's an experiment, short dance camera piece made by Latinas, Latin women in the UK. And even though I had the initial idea, I filmed, edited, as a director, I always work in collaboration with each person that I work with. And every woman that participates in this project add content, vision, and conversation and creation for the project. No? So I want to thank once again to Naia, Thais, Paula, Alexandra, Amparo, Caterina, and Anna, who is a project made mostly by women, but also to people who collaborate me in one way or another to do this project, like my little brother who did the music. The initial idea comes from certain images that I had a long time ago about the experience of migration myself, but also about the people around me. For example, the Ekeka carrying her life, her home, and hopes in a tiny bag, a cuestas. That any human being is illegal, and if we are here, it's because it's our right. More than 500 years, and the reasons today from the South to come from the North is colonialism and neocolonialism. The term post-colonialism for me is an euphemism, and I really believe that we are still have the heritage and the practice of the colonialism settled in all these centuries. No? For all of those that couldn't cross Rio Grande, the Mediterranean, from the Calais to the UK, the water is a frontier. The Latin Americans do not have just one identity. We are a pluricultural land. However, we share the most beautiful things. We share a really violent and oppressive history as well. Our lands are covered with the blood of our ancestors and ancestras. We are also mestizos that have been ashamed by our origins. For all of this, the invisibility of Latin Americans in the UK is not casual. One of the most typical questions from the British system is to ask about our ethnicity. And it's very common that all Latinx, we always choose other. So for this reason is that we start to create this piece. In the process of the short film dance, a lot of women, how I said before, collaborate with me because we considered that it was important to state and value our voice and perspective in what it was the cradle of colonialism. We won't forget where we are. Also, this project is filmed in a style that is named guerrilla style, guerrilla style. That it means to do is to do it without permissions for the uses of public space and to have a small budget. This is the only way that I've worked all my life, and this is the only way that I know how to work. So of course, that I'm going to continue to work in this way. And it's funny that it's named guerrilla style. It fits perfect. In a couple of weeks, I'm submitting my final dissertation for my MA in screen dance, and I choose to work in a theoretical and practical way, the concept of decolonization. This concept comes to conclude all the things I've been working since I choose art as the media to art, to collaborate, to give my little grain of sand to all of this that we are building. Decolonizing my artistic practice, giving value to all of that have been situated in the frontiers, in the edges, in exile. Especially through the space that I'm interested in is that the uses and appropriation of the common spaces, outside the establishment, outside the institutionalization of our actions. How Ngugi wa Thiong'o, that is one of the authors I've been researching in his book, Decolonizing the Mind from 1986. Theater is not a building. Theater is made by the people. Dance and art is the same. In my research as a Chilena and an artist, I realized that the Western world, one of the first thing that they do when they colonize the territories is to situate spaces specifically for this development. For example, with arts, we have the museums, the galleries, the academia, and the theater. And they are the specific spaces to validate art. What happened with all the rest? So even if I use contemporary art, for me, it's very interesting to situate it in popular context, especially in the uses of public space and la calle, the streets. And I will continue with this mission to revalue where the value has been erased and forgotten. And even if everything what has happened is irreparable, I don't know how to say that in English, irreparable, we need reparation. We also need symbolic and concrete reparation to heal the transgenerational and cultural trauma. The responsibility that we have as workers, activists, art workers, scholars is huge. So I want to really thank you for this instance, because this is the spaces that we start and we need to share all these thoughts and to keep building. No? So thank you very much. That's what I have to say about it.
Thank you so much, Andrea. That was beautiful. If I could invite all of our panelists back, we have a few audience questions. Lovely. And we have about 7 minutes for questions, so I'm going to get through as many as we can. And if we run a little bit over, then we can pass around emails and that kind of thing. So our first question is from Gina Robinson. Gina, if you'd like to pop in. Hello.
Hello. It's more of a comment than a question, so I'll be very brief. I just want to thank the panelists and the speakers. Thank you for sharing with us your experiences and especially your vulnerabilities. It's been a very humbling experience hearing about your trajectories. I'm something that you mentioned, Ellen, the imposter syndrome. I'm a linguist as well, and a British woman, and the idea of exploring other cultures through a language that isn't my own is sometimes quite scary. Andrea, also you mentioned that, by well done for speaking in English, because it's not always easy presenting in a language that isn't your own. I just wanted to say as well, thank you, Naia, for talking about decolonizing the self. I think that that's something that is is a really powerful lesson to try to learn. I think Katusha is here. I learned a very valuable lesson with Katusha a few weeks ago, and both personally and as a scholar. So I just wanted to say thank you. It's meant a lot. It's very moving to hear your experiences, and yeah, I'll take a lot of these lessons onwards in my research. So thank you.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Any responses from our panelists? Anything you guys want to say?
Just to say thank you, Gina. It's wonderful to know I'm not the only one who feels that way. And I also loved the resonances across these three presentations. I wasn't sure there were going to be too many before hearing them, but this has been, as you say, a really humbling and kind of empowering experience listening as well. So thank you to the other two.
Yeah, thank you, Gina, and thank you, Helen and Andrea. It's very difficult sometimes. This is my first time speaking publicly and sharing my experience. So I really appreciate your comment. It's encouraging to keep sending the message, because for me, colonization, in Spanish we say, is not oppression, it's capitalism. And I think that I truly believe that. And I think that's what I had, and that's where my fight comes from, or my struggle, my personal struggle.
Brilliant. Lovely. We have a question from Valentina, one of our amazing organizers. Valentina has a question for Naia and Ellen. Do you want to go ahead?
I mean, I can read. I was just going to say that I saw a lot of overlap between Ellen and Naia. Also, very nice to meet you all. And I was just wondering if you see, Naia mentioned the compassion with ourselves in this kind of transition or changing territories. Do you see a lot of that, or where do you see that, maybe in movements or communities? And also, do you see it in the novels when people talk about, I also worry about making mistakes, my accent. So yes, do you see a lot of that compassion with ourselves or not?
If I may jump in quickly and then I'll let the others speak. Thank you very much, Valentina, for that question. The answer, the kind of brief answer is, in this novel, no. There is not a lot of compassion with the characters don't have a lot of compassion for themselves. The kind of version of the author that appears in the book doesn't seem to have a lot of compassion for herself either. But I would just say that where I do see it a lot in my research is among translators and communities of translators. And I would love to know about the people working behind the scenes during this this conference, for whom I'm incredibly grateful, and whether they're reflected in communities of interpreters as well. But certainly among literary translators, especially those working on perhaps more difficult texts like the one that I spoke about today, or those working with poetry, and those working with bringing languages that are less often translated into English. So I've been doing some research recently on translations of indigenous poetry from Mesoamerica into English. There is a huge amount of solidarity and compassion and kind of collaborative, very horizontal working among those kinds of translators, and that is kind of undoes a lot of the damage that I think mainstream academia sometimes does to our egos and our kind of perspective on the world. That's very encouraging.
Anyone else?
My perspective, sorry. Is that okay?
Yes, Naia, your connection's a little bit spotty, so if you turn your video off, then we might be able to hear you a little bit better. Sorry.
Okay, No, it's okay. So from my perspective, I think in movements there is not much self-compassion. We try. I see that there is a lot of solidarity. Yes, that for working with various different Chilean organizations, you can see that there is a lot of solidarity. However, as a society, and this is obviously talking from the Chilean perspective, we are a very damaged society. We've had a lot of traumas, and please understand that trauma is not the pain, but is when we are alone with that pain. And from our history, from being colonialized, we've had genocides, we've had wars and all of that. And all of that creates pain, and that pain doesn't go anywhere. We don't process that pain. And we are at a point that we're holding so much pain that is super difficult to show compassion to other people, because it's easier to create pain and make people feel pain than stay yourself with the pain. So that is where compassion is a bit difficult. But there are this big movement, for example, that happened in 2019, and Javiera in the first panel was mentioning it. The feminist movement was the most important, and I think, again, and I'm going to reiterate is because I think women or feminine, we've got the ability to show empathy, to have more empathy, because we have suffered a lot, therefore we understand suffering and we don't want the others to suffer. So there is a lot more compassion being shown in movements. And I think the more we talked about our own pains, the easier it would be to heal, and the easier it would be to show compassion towards others, even if those others are our perpetrators.
Brilliant, thank you, Naia. Andrea, did you want to jump in with anything there? Lovely. Yeah, I think both of these answers really resonate with me, and the sort of end of affect in academia and the reinterpretation of affect and emotion into academia as an act of decolonization and an act of like anti-hegemony, because we're told that we shouldn't show our emotions. And I think that showing them and being vulnerable in that way is very powerful. All right, we have time for one more question. If anyone wants to pop their sound on or drop something in the chat. Oh, we have a great one in here. Lovely. All right. Yeah, if you'd like to make a comment, question. Yvette, thank you for raising your hand. Would you like to jump in?
Yeah, but there is also another person, Giovanna. She's also
yes, Giovanna.
Giovanna.
It's me. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Valentina, who piped up first? I don't get to see who raises their hands.
I think it was Yvette, but if whoever wants to start, we only have time for maybe one more question. So maybe for Giovanna, because I already asked a question before.
Thank you so much. So I can I do the question in Spanish? If it's that okay. Yes. Perfecto. Yes. Sobre esta cuestión de la compasión y la solidaridad, no mencionaron solidaridad, pero es también una de las cosas que normalmente se dicen, que los grupos de mujeres, los colectivos de mujeres, las mujeres somos más solidarias y sí, ok, por este sentido de sufrimos más, lo que quieras, pero es una cosa que en mi misma investigación emerge, esta cuestión de la compasión, de la empatía, pero yo como que lucho mucho en comprometerme con este tipo de conceptos, porque tienden a esencializar como que las mujeres somos naturalmente más. Entonces no sé cómo navegar esta cosa de, ok, cómo reconocer o analizar la compasión, la solidaridad, el empatismo, sin esencializar a la mujer y decir naturalmente somos más, etcétera, ¿no? Entonces esta era la pregunta, pero también si hay alguna referencia a libros o investigaciones que tomen un poco más de forma analítica esta compasión y este tipo de fenómenos en suma. Muchas gracias.
An absolutely brilliant comment. Thank you so much for bringing that in. I guess Naia, if you wanted to jump in, or anyone else, of course.
Yeah. I didn't have to use women as a word. I mean,
we're having some trouble hearing you, Naia.
What I tried to say is like, I didn't mean to say women. I meant to say feminine is the feminine side, which implies that men and women and non-binary and everyone has that feminine side that is able to feel empathy and compassion.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think these incredible papers really show the ways that femininity does not belong solely to women. Femininity can come from anywhere and can represent anything. And I think that's one of the really powerful anti-colonial aspects of all of these three amazing presentations. All right, any other final comments from our panelists? Brilliant. Thank you all so much. If you have residual questions, feel free to email them to our organizers. Please, everyone, virtually put your hands together for our interpreters and our organizers who have just been so superhumanly incredible. And finally, thank you to our panelists for three truly mind-blowing and thought-provoking papers. I really had an amazing time today. Valentina, anything to say before we go?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone again. And yes, if you want to contact the speakers, I know we had a little bit, we're over time. So I'm really sorry we didn't have enough time for questions, but it was really good. And our next panel is at 1. So I will leave you to that. I will close this meeting, but you can use the same link to come back to the meeting at 1. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.